Yes! Unless you've been living under a rock for the past 7 months or so, you're fully aware of the popularity and notoriety of Season 4's Crucible Pinnacle rewards known as Luna's Howl and Now Forgotten. And in this video, we'll discuss the popularity of these two weapons alongside the current day state of competitive Crucible where these two weapons are obtained from. So without further ado, let's get it in. It simply cannot be denied that there's an ease of use factor attributed to both of these weapons that makes it completely unincentivized to use anything else. I'm not saying that everything else is inferior to these weapons, but once you obtain Luna's Howl and start using it, everything else feels like it pales in comparison. Magnificent Howl enables you to kill basically anyone with no less than 3 shots. Yeah, but a lot of people forget how powerful Zen Moment is. After 5 hits, your weapon gains a temporary stability increase by 66% of its base stability. And when Zen Moment procs, man, you really feel it. Zen Moment makes shots from a Luna's Howl Now Forgotten feel so crisp and accurate, and even though Trust is probably my favorite 180 RPM hand cannon, going back to using Trust after using Luna's Howl feels as if I'm missing out on something. And I hate feeling that way, because even though we don't have a plethora of weapons to use in Destiny 2, there's still a decent amount of them that I prefer using in the Crucible. I have a ton of weapons with amazing rolls ideal for PvP, but due to the fact that these particular weapons have little to no competitive value, it's pointless to try to use them when everybody else is undoubtedly going to be using something a lot more PvP viable, especially in competitive where you'll see the same loadouts across the board, because anyone who has Luna or Not Forgotten are definitely going to be using it, and there's no doubt about that. Destiny's players have had the same mind state since the earliest days of D1, and I doubt that'll ever change. Luna and Not Forgotten are PvP's apex predators, not simply because of Zen Moment and Magnificent Howl that we talked about earlier, but also because of the fact that the 180 RPM hand cannons are so much easier to use than the majority of every other weapon archetype in the game. The 180 RPM archetype of hand cannons made their debut in Destiny 2 in Season 2, and even though they didn't instantly rise to popularity, it was a point of no return for the Crucible when they did. And the moment that they did, it became incredibly apparent how much harder you have to work to perform in PvP with the other hand cannon archetypes. And the reason why is because the recoil for console players for the 110, 140, and 150 RPM hand cannon archetypes is entirely over the top, alongside the fact that Bloom is still fairly annoying as well. So even when an exotic powerhouse like the Ace of Spades has better stats and perks across the board when compared to the likes of the Not Forgotten, Ace of Spades is still considered a higher risk weapon to use if you aren't using it on PC, which is the land of 100% stability. So those who own the Not Forgotten in most cases wouldn't be caught dead using an Ace of Spades over it. Again, this is an entirely different story on PC. And from a realistic standpoint, it isn't the player base's fault that the game operates like this. No, not at all. It's actually Bungie's fault for not giving every weapon in the game enough competitive value to necessitate its use in the Crucible. And this is far from something new. And since it's been like this in both Destiny games, we'll be stuck playing a game where only certain things are good at a particular point in time. We have meta phases in PvP because there'll always be a point in time where 1 or 2 weapons are just better than everything else. And the meta weapons haven't ever been decided based on a popularity contest either. It's always been when a weapon is borderline overpowered and or performing so well to the point where it's doing things better than everything else. Now, I will say that even though I don't agree with the fact that there'll always be a PvP meta, the best case scenario would be if every meta was guaranteed to be short-lived. Again, if a meta absolutely has to exist. This was the case in Destiny 1, but the only reason why every meta was short-lived was because Bungie had the terrible tendency to nerf everything that rose to the top in popularity. Vex Mythoclast, Soros Regime, Last Word, Thorn, Hopscotch Pilgrim, Clever Dragon were all PvP apex predators at one point in time until Bungie nerfed them into the ground. Now with D2 on the other hand, it's been dramatically different for the best and worst of reasons. If I recall correctly, we've only had a total of 3 metas in the entire year and a half that Destiny 2 has been out. Again, this is from what I recall, so I might be completely wrong on this. But to my acknowledgement, in year 1, it was Might of Multi-Tool, Uriel's Gift, and Last Hope. But when Might of Multi-Tool's high caliber rounds was slightly nerfed alongside the range nerf on the Uriel's Gift, these weapons eventually faded from the Crucible's existence. Not sure why people stopped using Last Hope, but after several underperforming exotic weapons were buffed, Graviton Lance wreaked havoc in the Crucible alongside the Vigilance Wing, and this was solely due to the fact that these weapons were killing at D1 time to kill speeds in an era of slow times to kill and the necessity of team shooting. Shortly after, year 2 rolled around and the Luna's Howl Not Forgotten were introduced as the Season 4 Crucible Pinnacle weapons. It took a while for these two weapons to frequently appear in PvP, but when they did, it became apparent that they were here to stay. So we established that Bungie's method of dealing with the meta in D1 was through nerfs, whereas in D2, everything was tweaked slightly or was allowed to live until something else came along and secured the throne. Both of these methods were never 100% true solutions, and it's still mind-boggling to know that the most simple approach to dealing with the meta has been in front of us the entire time. And when I say simple, I mean that in the most literal sense. All Bungie has has to do is buff every weapon across the board. That's literally it. Like I said before, there's some weapons that I really want to use in PvP, but they just can't keep up, and that's inexcusable. You know how big of a loop everybody would be thrown for if Bungie undid the nerf to Mitre Multi-Tool's high caliber rounds? Wait, what if the same was done to Uriel's range nerf? What if every hand cannon outside of the 180 RPM family had a buff that reduced their visual recoil and bloom? I don't think anybody realizes how big of a step forward that would be, and how much more often everybody will be reacting and being defeated by something that isn't Luna or Not Forgotten. Seriously, I don't think that anybody in their right mind would say that they enjoy losing gunfights, but I can vouch for everybody when I say that it'd be pretty surprising to get killed by something unexpected like a Nurgle PR4 or an origin story. I propose that this is the safest route to take because nerfing these two weapons is completely out of the question. First off, I'd never propose for something to get nerfed unless it's ridiculously overpowered, close to impossible to counter, and or rage worthy to go against. And I definitely would never advocate nerfing something that takes so much time and investment and dedication to obtain. Luna's Howl, Not Forgotten both require you to do the absolute most to obtain them, and doing so is not an easy feat. So now that it's confirmed that both of these weapons are getting their RPM reduced by 30, everybody who worked their backsides off to get them are see them with rage, especially Not Forgotten, which is owned by a very small percentage of the Destiny community, since it requires you to first obtain a Luna's Howl, get 300 kills with it in competitive, and reach the glory rank of legend. Nerfing these two weapons would be no different than the president and CEO of a company cutting the pay of his vice president. You don't see the correlation? Okay, I'll explain. Anybody that high in the chain of command worked their absolute hardest to get to where they are, whereas those who obtain the Not Forgotten persevere and achieve the max glory rank. So my point is, why would you punish and penalize those who work so hard to get to where they are? Magnificent Howl is one of the most powerful damage buff perks in the game, true, but something like Kill Clip can easily keep up with it, especially due to the fact that Kill Clip is significantly easier to proc than Magnificent Howl. Well, for me it is. I have potato aim most of the time, and a lot of the time it's easier for me to just kill somebody than outright land 2 precision headshots in a row. A lot of people may not have noticed this, but from Season 5 onward, the direction of PvP pinnacle weapons and the competitive playlist as a whole saw a lot of changes. First off, the attainability methods for Mountaintop and Recluse are significantly easier than those for both Luna's Howl and Not Forgotten, and are tied to a triumph as opposed to being locked to one character, giving players more freedom to progress towards obtaining these weapons on different characters if need be. It's to the extent where you could progress towards the Mountaintop and quick play and only have to worry about getting to 2100 glory points. And even though this method would take longer, it's good to know that you aren't required to do literally everything for the Mountaintop in the competitive playlist. The Recluse is even easier to obtain because in Season 6, glory gains were doubled, making it way easier to rank up in the Crucible. Aside from simply winning matches, it's not really a quest for the Recluse. You'd think that the quest for this weapon will require you to perform various feats with submachine guns in competitive, but you don't. All you gotta do is win a bunch of matches and hit 2100 points in competitive. I honestly believe that Bungie took this approach due to the fact that the competitive playlist was never considered the most welcome inside of PvP, and for multiple reasons. And these reasons are the same ones that personally demotivated me to go for the Not Forgotten. For one, competitive stops being fun right around the time you reach around 3500 to 4000 glory points. This is considered high comp, and here you'll be running to highly skilled 4-stack teams, account recovs, cheaters, and or DDoSers, the whole 9 yards. And yes, they're all rocking Dust Rock Blues, Luna's Howl or Not Forgotten, and a Warcliff Coil. Competitive, especially high comp, isn't a place you want to be if you're looking for a challenge from people with diversified loadouts. Whatever pride or honor you have doesn't matter at high comp because everybody is playing to win, and that's literally all that matters to them. And they're willing to go to any extreme to secure those wins. And that entire realization is why a lot of people pay higher skill players to get on their account and get the Not Forgotten for them. Things like this happen when what's considered to be the most powerful PvP weapon is locked behind something that only a very small percentage of players are capable of doing. I've been spending a lot of time on Reddit lately, and a lot of people have proposed that Bungie should incorporate a rank floor system to competitive. The competitive playlist is designed to only reward you when you win, and when you lose, you derank. The rank floor system, if incorporated, would lower the penalty of losing matches by preventing you from deranking past a certain point. The 5 ranks before Legend are split up into 3 different tiers. For the Guardian rank, there's Guardian 1, 2, and 3, and the same applies for Brave, Heroic, Fable, and Mythic. If rank floors existed in competitive, you could rank up to Fable 1, for example, and not have to worry about deranking back into Heroic. I think this would be a good idea now, due to the fact that glory gains are higher since the debut of Season 6, alongside the fact that Luna's and NF are being tweaked. This will undoubtedly make the competitive playlist a lot more welcoming for those who avoided it in the past, because everybody could come to an agreement that the competitive playlist is played only for the pinnacle weapons. Very rarely do you ever see people hit glory rank legend and continue to play competitive, and I guarantee that if the next crucible pinnacle weapon can be earned simply by playing quick play, you'll barely see anybody stepping foot into the competitive playlist. This reason, alongside all the other reasons I mentioned earlier, are why the competitive competitive playlist is completely unincentivized to play. I doubt that Bungie would ever introduce a Crucible Pinnacle weapon that can be earned outside of competitive, since that's the only reason why anybody would play the game type. And this is bad, because for months, the player base has been asking for more competitive exclusive gear to fill the void that the absence of Trials of the Nine left behind. I can't count how many times I've heard the proposal of introducing competitive exclusive weapons and armor ornaments, bounties, and many other things that would build the desire to play the competitive playlist as much as quick play. You know, I wish that Bungie spent more time getting things right the first time instead of the most needed or expected changes that happen much later, because that's what inevitably makes people mad. Lunas and NF are going to be changed to 150 RPM precision frame hand cannons, but what if they were like this in the first place? If they were, it wouldn't have ever came a point in time for them to be changed. And with that being stated, I honestly don't believe that Bungie invests a lot of time in the playtesting, because situations like this could be easily avoided. Now that these two weapons are being changed, something else will inevitably be considered the best weapon to use in the Crucible, because the majority of those who own one of or both of these weapons will more than likely be discouraged from using them. On the upside, this could potentially encourage Bungie to buff other weapons and archetypes, and we'll hopefully see more diversity in the Crucible. But that does it for this one, everybody. In the comment section below, tell me how you feel about the changes to the Luna's Howl Not Forgotten. Also, drop me a like if you enjoyed this video. And if you're new around here, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more elite gaming content. But with that being stated, 1LHD is over and out. Y'all take it easy.
And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.